Brady.
Hi, Anita. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks, and you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
That's good.
Where's your office, Anita?
I work with John Ross, so in the same
No,
building
I
as
know,
him.
but I know. Are you in that office, or
Yes.
I just agreed with John. I'll come and visit, spend another day working in your office. Probably the 30th of June, I think will be the day.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Yeah, Morgan and I were chatting about it. It'll be good to have you in the office.
Yeah, you guys should, given the course, there might be things you want to do from that to your broader group.
Yeah.
I haven't discussed with John yet whether he wants me for a day or 2 days, but I can do both of those, a day or 2 days.
Okay, awesome.
I'll tell you one thing which I've tried to get John to do, but he hasn't. But
Yeah.
it goes over really well. I've written 8 books, but 3 for the public, and my first book I've run for lots of companies where everybody gets an autographed book from me and from John, and I run an hour and a half on the book. And it
Okay.
goes down really well. It's all about business and growth and stuff.
Okay.
And then I could run whatever else John wants done in the day. We always sort of work it out. But if you and Morgan team up together to ambush them, you should talk about that, because
Yeah,
it's a really good thing for the staff. Like, it's really positive, and they all get a book. They get really excited by it, and
Very, very true. Very true. Whenever we've my beta division do a conference and that sort of stuff, and they get those kind of things, it definitely goes a long way to making them feel special.
Yeah, and I know John's. Well, I think he's read it. I've certainly given it to him, and he's referred it to other people who bought my book online. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Okay. So what's the title of that particular book?
A good man, a great dad, and a loving husband.
Oh, cool.
And
Okay.
it's very much about. It's very broad for everybody, but it's got a lot of business messages in it.
Okay.
And yeah, I've done it for a few firms for a conference, and it was just a big hit.
Yeah. Okay. And
Um,
what's the cost, Bradley, if you don't mind me asking? Because if I've got
well,
enough information, I'm sure I can make a sale.
yeah. I'll send you an email about it. You
Okay.
and Morgan. I'll
Okay.
shoot you an email.
Okay.
Morgan's on here now. I was just talking to Anita. Morgan, I just agreed with John. Can you hear me, Morgan? It said he was coming on, but he hasn't. It still says he's joining. For some reason, his phone isn't he isn't clicking in. It's saying joining, but it's not happening.
Looks like it's gone off again.
Yeah, I don't know what's maybe he's having some internet trouble where he is.
Was he in his vehicle driving home again?
I don't know. Maybe it just said said
Okay.
that he's trying to join, but it just keeps saying it joining without it actually having joined.
Okay. Oh, it's okay. You send us an email, and the two of us can chat about it and get it sorted. And I definitely think it's a good idea. Morgan and I have been talking about, every time we finish one of these, we have a chat about all the stuff. And I think it would be good for us to brainstorm what we think would be relevant, obviously, to the real estate side and to our side, and to put something together around that.
Yep. Hey, Morgan. Yes, he's definitely driving. Looks like he's
that's
still
definitely him in his car.
Yeah, it looks like he's finally on. Hey, Morgan. Hey, Jacqueline. Melissa, Ian's on. Jack, you listing like crazy out there?
I could always list more, but yeah, anything I can get, it's going out the door. I'm going to sell 2 tonight. One of them's only been on the market for a week. I had 60 people through in 1 week. I've got 8 offers on the table, and the top one's 100 grand over the top of the range. So
excellent. How many listings you carrying?
7, with 2 to come this week.
Very good. I don't, now that you guys are franchise group, I don't see your emails coming through with your activity anymore. So yeah. That's great. Well done.
Yeah, I'd love another couple just to tie me up for Christmas.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, there's not really that many houses coming on still. And
well, hopefully there'll be a flood in the new year, given how the market's pretty strong. All right, listen, guys, we might get started. It's 4 past, probably a few more to join, but we'll get into it. We're gonna sort of move reasonably fast today. There's not a lot of exercises. I want to get through TQS and then do cycle time reduction today, which is pretty interesting stuff. And a lot of this little bit is very Covey-ish, you know, and that's just following it up. So empowerment, you know, we know all of that. If you want your team to focus on quality, though, they have to know it really matters. And customer service, learning, growing, and thinking about, you know, if you could just teach your staff the concepts around, you know, spirit of service, the customer value model, the customer value package, and a few tools, then you can really start to help a lot. And if you can get people to really understand moments of truth, then they have a bit of a different view of things when you realize that the overall impression you gain from somebody is that combination of both tangible and intangibles of every encounter they have. You know, like all of a sudden they start, oh, I really didn't think about that. You know, I didn't think about the fact that, you know, if I have trouble parking my car, it's going to reflect badly on the company. If it looks messy coming in, you know, if they had trouble getting through on the phone, if they spoke to a receptionist who didn't, you know, I remember years ago when I first started, the receptionist at Jealous Craig Hawthorne, and that was the time when they only had, like us, like 3 offices. When you called that office, it was so abrupt and cold and rude. It's like, how can that be what you want to portray to the outside world? You know, when I first went to my second law firm, I walked into reception for an interview. I'd been through the headhunter, and I was meeting the managing director and the managing partner and the chairman. I walked into reception, and this lovely receptionist from about 20 feet away looked up and said, "Oh, you must be Mr. Brown. We've been looking forward to your visit," you know? And it's like, wow, that's really professional. And that was great. Like an immediate great first impression. And when we talk about cycle time reduction, I'm going to talk more about that. But, you know, all of those things fill your whatever. When I walked into Fletcher's, two people at reception talking to each other and not even looking up. Completely different vibe from the moment you interact with the business. Training involves obviously attitude and skills, and they're both, you know, that character and competence. we're going to go through this because it's not really that necessary for what we're doing. All right, there's some really cool tools that help you to analyze a situation and look at something in TQS, which I really quite like. So there's a few different tools we're going to look at. I'm going to go through each of these, so we don't need to sort of talk, name them all and then go back through them. So what we want to understand, and I really want you to understand this, is the Pareto principle. For those of you that don't know it, it's the 80-20 rule, that usually 20% of things account for 80% of your problem. If that makes sense. Like, it's only if you're having a whole lot, like, for example, you might have having mail not being delivered, and you start to keep track of why, and you work out that there's blah, 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 6 reasons, but you'll find out that 1 reason or 2 reasons is 80% of the time. And it's the same thing, like 80-20 works for so many things. It doesn't work for customer service, as I told you, but it works for so many things, in the sense that if you can focus on getting something to 80%, you're usually doing really, really well. If you can focus on a very few, like 20%, will tend to be the vast volume of what you do. Solving a few problems of the main problems will usually solve the majority of the issue for you. And we're going to look at some examples of that as we look at these sort of things. So the first of our tools is customer bug list. Turnaround times. So what's wrong? Why are our customers unhappy? Here's an example: long turnaround time on purchasing items. Phone goes unanswered when people call. You might have purchase orders or people not notified of things. Lack of flexibility. When you're trying to book an appointment with somebody and they say, oh no, sorry, booked out then, booked. That's not a positive experience. When we teach Fletcher's Way, we teach people how to qualify a call and not lead to those disconnects because they're negative. They lead to negative situations. So if you say to someone, I'm available Tuesday or Wednesday, which day do you have in mind? They'll say, oh, well, how about Tuesday? And you say, terrific, I'm available in the afternoon from this time or that time. Do either of those suit? Is far better than someone saying, yeah, how about 3 o'clock Wednesday? And you go, oh, I'm sorry, I've got an appointment then. Because it's immediately a negative. It's immediately a disconnect. Too much, paperwork, all these sort of things. All of these things you start to work out when you're analyzing customer service and you're starting to survey people, you're starting to get feedback, you're getting surveys back in. You start to put a list together of what gives people the shits. Same internally. And you're then going to start to look at the frequency of these sort of things and work out what really is a priority based on the Pareto principle. You might find that, let's say these were 9 issues that we identified in all our survey work, and we're gonna look at it over 3 months and keep track of how many people say what, and we'll find out how many times we've been told the same thing. Like, long turnaround times came out to be 10 out of 30 complaints was that. Well, on the Pareto principle, you deal with that, you've already dealt with 1/3 of your problems with just dealing with one issue. And you don't usually have to deal with all the issues because 20% of the issues are going to lead to 80% of the fix in most instances. I love how and why. So, like, the Japanese have a term called the Hoshin method, and Hoshin planning is about flowcharting out like this things that you want. So, for example, we want more referrals. So we're going to stage a PR event, and then we work out, well, how do we actually do that? Well, we have to stage an event. Well, how do we stage it? Well, we got to look for a venue. So at the moment, we're planning our kickstart for 2021. Prue, Caroline, Sarah, and I, and we are at the stage of this. We want to have a kickstart, one for sales, one for IS and PM for the whole group. So we've got all of these things. We've got an agenda, we've got a venue, we've got speakers, we've got food and catering, and then we just work down from there. So how are we going to fit them all in a room? Well, we're going to break them into 2 groups because of COVID. We don't think we can plan to have something that has everybody in one room, number one. So then we have to go and find a venue that can suit, and you just start working down. You just build yourself downwards to do it. And all of a sudden it becomes really simple compared to looking at this, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? You know, it's this sort of thing. Once you start to break it down, it becomes really easy. That's my brain immediately does this when I have to plan something. I immediately start to just put them into silos, break down each silo, and then it's easy. You sort of thought of everything. And that's a thing with problems. We want to get more referrals, or we've got telephones falling out. We've got lack of people responding to emails. All right, how do we fix it? And then you just work through. Another one, which is similar, is why? Like, all right, why do we get orders lost? And we've determined through our analysis that there are 4 reasons why we have those are lost. And if we've done a really good job, before we spend a lot of time, we would be doing some tracking to work out the percentages of all those. And we might find that these 2 account for 80% of it. We got to fix those, and then we can work on those in our own time. So we look at it and go, all right, well, why do orders get lost? We fail to ship it. Well, why did we fail to ship it? I don't think we drew all the little lines here, but that's fine. Well, we didn't label it properly, or the label came off, or it was mishandled. And then we start to analyze, well, all right, how do we make sure it gets labeled properly? How do we, and you just fix things that way just by that analysis. But remember, 80-20 is really, really important in this. Focus on what's going to get you the biggest fix with the least amount of effort. What's going to eliminate most of your problems. Another tool is like a flow chart. This is kind of a joking one, but you can work your way through it. So like, is it working? Yes, well, don't mess with it, which is a nice way to put it. Sorry. I get my little, I don't think you guys see it, but the Zoom bar about sharing gets in the way of these, it sits across the bottom. So is it working? No. Did you mess with it? Yes. Well, you're an idiot. Did you mess with it? No, I didn't. Well, will you get in trouble? Yes. Well, all right, you're screwed. Anyway, it's a funny thing. But you can just look at these sort of things and work out a diagram. Yes, no, yes, no. We're going to see a lot of this in cycle time reduction. Just another way to look at something is like, all right, it's working, great. Is there any room for improvement? No, leave it alone. It's not working, we're getting feedback. Start to flow out your issues. Tracking chart is where you keep track of things. So you use a chart, of course, to say how many errors, and if we're trying to fix it, is our error rate dropping? Is it working? And we've got down in this sort of situation in several weeks, we've got down from 23 cards a week being a problem down to less than 5. And we might deem that that's about as good as we're going to get. Or we fixed it, we're going to worry about the next big problem, and we're just going to slowly fix the rest of that. Tracking is really important. And I remember in the 90s when quality came in through a lot of systems, the QA, quality assurance, and TQS, and you go into a lot of businesses, banks, McDonald's, and I can remember them having pieces of paper next to them, keeping tabs of by time what people were coming in for, what they wanted, how many people there were. McDonald's was keeping track of how many orders were being done at all these different times, so how much food they had to cook. The banks were looking at, well, what are people actually coming in here for? Why are they coming to the counter? What could they actually do through a mail drop, through the ready teller? What could they do instead of actually standing in a queue? And can we get rid of as much of that as possible, because then we're going to save having labor. And so people use these sort of different tools to do that. I just want to come back real briefly to this again, and I just want you to I have found this to be absolutely the case on pretty much everything, and that is, Pareto principle. Whenever you're looking at stuff, try to find the major causes, few major ones you're gonna find is gonna resolve 80% of your problems. And that's almost always the case. So always think about that. And you don't know that unless you keep track. You know, in your own world of when we get to cycle time reduction, in your own world of focusing on your time, you start to keep track of what you're doing using, say, Dr. Fred's tools that are available of keeping track of what you do all day and putting it into different categories. You're going to find that your time wasted stuff, your quadrant 3 and 4, is going to come into certain baskets. Email distractions, people asking you lots and lots of questions at all different times, dealing with late notices because people didn't give you enough time to fix things, fixing other people's problems because they didn't give you enough information. And then you can look at that, you can look at how much of that is causing it, and then start to work backwards and say, all right, my biggest waster is all of the junk emails and all the stuff I'm wasting time on there. So I got to fix that. I'm going to start blocking all of these senders. I'm going to get them into my junk mailbox. I'm going to do emails only 3 times a day. Otherwise, I'm not going to go near my email box. I'm just going to quickly deal with it because it keeps distracting me. I'm going to turn off my automatic things so I don't see the emails coming through. When I'm doing other stuff, I'm going to close my Outlook. Stuff like that helps you start to really concentrate and do what you need to do. Before we leave TQS, go on to cycle time, is there any questions anybody has about any of that stuff? Anything from the TQS side of it? Do we like it? All right. Very few people have ever had encounter with cycle time reduction, which came out of Motorola. It came out of the Six Sigma program of Motorola. I was fortunate to do a week-long course through the Sir John Monash Business Center on cycle time reduction, and then I engaged Motorola University, it's called, to come into one of my law firms, and we spent 2 whole days, I think, re-engineering a department we had in insurance, and it was pretty fascinating to do it. And I want to tell you a few things that came from me working with cycle time reduction. I was new to Purvis Clark Richards, my law firm, and I went upstairs to AMP for lunch. AMP was our landlord, our biggest client, and our insurer, as I mentioned to you. And I was at a lunch with the state manager and a bunch of their top clients. And I had only started at PCR for a very short time before, maybe a couple weeks. And one of the guys at my table, I'm going to call him Dickhead, said, you know, one of my favorite things about dealing with your law firm is the amount of time I get to sit in reception and read your many law books that are sitting around while I wait for someone to give me service. I wait for your solicitors to come out, you know. So one of my first cycle time reduction programs there was to get the waiting time in reception cut down. And I'm going to make up these numbers now, but when I first got there, I spent, after that, I got our receptionist, that lovely lady Jody, to keep a record of every single person who came to reception for a month using the charts. And we recorded when they arrived, their appointed meeting time, and when they were picked up by the solicitor and who it was. And we looked at it and we averaged, like, post, not the time they arrived, but from the time the meeting was meant to start, the average was something like 13 minutes they were kept waiting, or it might even have been worse than that. I really don't remember that number, but it was bad. It might have even been worse. So what we did is we educated the whole firm that this is not acceptable. It's giving us, what you're having is every single one of your clients who walks in with you is already shitty before it even starts because they're sick of waiting for you. So what's going to happen is you're going to be notified the moment they arrive for their 1 o'clock. You're going to be told it's 5 minutes to 1, but they're here and your appointment's at 1. Your goal is to get them out of reception within 1 minute. And we then kept track. Our first month, by the end of it, we were down to 1 minute and 19 seconds. And we got under a minute. And basically we had to then deal with, to do that, we had to deal with some of the recalcitrants who kept doing it. And I basically said, I'm not going to allow you to have any client meetings anymore if you don't do this. And we got it down to where, all right, that's not a problem anymore. We don't have clients walking in who are aggressive and angry before they even start. When we looked at the insurance through cycle time reduction with Motorola, we were a work cover firm, did other insurance, but big work cover firm. And, $5 million a year of work cover insurance, legal work. And the average amount of days from the time, and I'm making this up again, but I'm not far off, that from the time the claim came in until the claim was resolved was 156 days. Our first go at cycle time, we believed we could physically get it down to something like 45 days. And we got it down like to 70, and we ended up pretty close to the 45, from 156 or something down to 45. Again, I'm making the numbers up, but they're pretty close, by focusing on cycle time, getting rid of the things that were just wasting everybody's time. And it was unbelievable how bad a process it was. And what does that mean? It's just like Jack is telling me that he's got 7 listings. He's selling 2 more. He's 2 more tonight. He just sold 1 yesterday, whatever. This one sold in a week. The more property Jack can sell quickly, the more property he can handle. The longer he's holding on to stock, the more he's got to do opens, the more time he spends. Without thinking about it, his hourly rate goes down and down and down. The sooner and quicker he sells a property. On the flip side, we like to get the publicity around a property for a period of time, and particularly in an auction market. But so there's trade-offs. But think about that. Jack can either spend 40 hours on a property, or he can spend 8 hours on a property, and either way he's going to get the same amount of pay at the end of the day. But his hourly rate is going to go down by 500% on the 40 hour versus the 8. So there's a lot of reasons to do things quickly, as long as you're not suffering from quality. Your goal is to eliminate waste and in cycle time. And waste is, what percent of your time is spent on things that are not quadrant 2. They're not important and not urgent. They're usually quadrant 3 and 4 is just not important at all. Work that you're checking for other people, fixing mistakes that could have been avoided, inadequate information. You got to go back and ask people for stuff. So you got to put it aside and wait for responses and all those sort of things. You're trying to get clarity on what you're supposed to do. You don't know. You're just answering questions that have been answered many times before, and people aren't really paying attention. Other non-value stuff, other quadrant 3 and 4 stuff. What percentage of your time falls into this whole category? How much of your time is falling into quadrant 3, quadrant 4? That is waste. If it isn't quadrant 1 or 2, it's waste. And 1 is urgent, 2 is what we want to be in, but 3 and 4 is just waste. And if you can start to figure that out, that's the whole principle around Dr. Fred focusing on dollar productive activity. If you can focus on quadrants 1 and 2, where everything you're doing is important, yep, some things have to be urgent and timely, but overall, bang, then wow, you multiply your time. The more time you spend wasting on 3 and 4, then no good. So cycle time is focusing on things like, why do we do it? Well, 1, we want to reduce costs, and the less time we spend on something, the lower our cost. We all work on hourly rates. We're all paid hourly. Everybody in our society is on that sort of basis. So if the quicker we get things done, the less cost there is. Plus, it gives us more time to do other things, therefore increasing our productivity. Saves time, which is fundamental, because the more time we save, the more time we have for other things. The less costs we have, the more profits we have. Very simple. It gets things to the customers quicker. They're usually happier, faster if we can do things quicker and faster. If you can respond to your colleague's inquiry quickly, then they're going to be significantly happier than if it took an extra 3 or 4 days. Everyone's happier when they get what they want. And today, everybody wants everything instantly. They want it so fast, PMs really suffers from that. And we all do. Everybody wants things instantly. So, you get happier customers, more market share, more profit. There's a lot of reasons to focus on cycle time. Usually it requires some good teamwork because you need people to work together. For example, Melissa can have some really good ideas on how to improve the way that they're processing marketing in their office. But if the salespeople don't cooperate, it doesn't happen. Patricia wants to implement some new thing in property management, and it's only going to work is if the staff buy into it and say, all right, I'm going to use this new process. And if they don't, we've had trouble with one of our sales people in the last couple of weeks where they keep having trouble with real-time agent. And they were complaining again today. And I said, you're the only one who has this problem. And it's because you're not following the directions. It's not because there's a problem with the product. It's because of you. And you're not doing it right. And you keep not doing it right. You keep causing problems. You keep getting aggressive. You keep having problems with them. You keep giving us a headache because you're just not doing it right. So, you got to get the staff behind it. But when you get it, people are happier because things work better, work easier, work faster. It's a win-win, It makes everybody happy. Quality is an environment where there's no variation, there's no problems. It just happens. It gets done. You process, you request annual leave, it gets done. You put in your marketing schedules, it gets done correctly. You process your papers to real-time agent and it all flows. It all goes out to everybody correctly. Everybody's happy. You ask for board to go up, it goes in the right place, you're happy. You want a photo shoot, X time they show up, they take the photo shoot, it all works well. We all like things to just happen. And whenever they don't happen, we get more frustrated. Our customer service attitude goes down, our satisfaction goes down, our costs go up. This variation and defects is what quality is really fundamentally about, is trying to get rid of defects. Just not having problems. Don't do things wrong. Let's get as right as possible. Again, I think at Fletcher's we work bloody hard at that, and I think we're very good at that overall, of getting things right. We've worked with our suppliers for such a long time to do the same thing. And you just can't achieve your strategic objectives when you keep having problems. It's just, it just takes the eye off the ball. I like this. If you have real confidence in a system, you do things to just when it's needed. You don't have to do it in the just in case thing, like let's give ourselves an extra 3 days because we know we have a lot of problems. You don't have to do that. Let's allocate extra hours because we know I have a problem. All those things. If it's a quality environment and people have confidence in it, we know the systems are going to work, you don't have to do that. You can work on a just as needed basis. There's a myth on by that admin work can't be measured like production. And quality came to the manufacturing sector almost 50 years before it came to the services sector, because the belief was you couldn't measure it. And that's just not true. The belief is that it's not going to result in as much increased office automation would result in productivity increases as it did in the production, area. And we all know that just because things get automated doesn't mean it gets more efficient and so forth. It doesn't. I want to give you an example of, can you measure admin work? The answer is yes, if you want to. For example, I told our receptionist at Purvis Clark Richards that she had 3 jobs to do. Number 1 was to get people out of reception as quickly as possible. Number 2 was to make sure that when people called or when people came in, that they had as positive impression of our firm as possible through her customer service attitude. And number 3 was maintaining rooms and stuff like that, all the bookings. But come back to the first 2. You can measure how long people are in reception. I already showed you that. And we were able to get people down. Number 2, by running verbal or surveys and asking them about their first impression of First Clark Richards when they phoned in or when they came into reception. What did they rate it as? And we were able to give her ratings on both of those. In fact, everyone at that firm had TQS ratings in every role. So you can do it. You can figure it out for anything. Melissa, you could work out the admin things for anyone in your department as to, well, what really matters? How fast are they doing the marketing schedules? How many errors have happened in a month? How many, whatever. What's the satisfaction of the salespeople that are processing it through Anna? What's the satisfaction of people through Jacqueline? We're now using Alio for property management, and Andrew sent it through today. That our 159 surveys that came in this month or whatever the period was, we had a 4.4 out of 5. That's 8.8 out of 10, which isn't good enough, but we're working on it. So we know we're measuring, and we can break it down into all different categories as to, well, where is the lack of customer satisfaction coming from? Is it the fact that communication, time to get things done, flow of money, whatever it might be? And you start to be able to improve it. And if we work on it and we don't get to 4.5 and then 4.6, we're not doing it right. We're not working on the right things. So cycle time is this total elapsed time for a single process from when the expression of whatever I need is given to when it's satisfied. And that might be that in Melissa's case, a salesperson has asked for a stage, using a proposal point to create me a proposal, and I need a marketing schedule, and it's 10 o'clock now, and I'm going out at 2 o'clock, and she gets it to him at 1, you'd say there's a 3-hour cycle time in that situation. A client calls us, and the process is from the time they call until we've actually had the appointment or booked the appointment, what's that cycle time? We've always aimed at Fletcher's to have it booked within 1 hour. That's our goal. And within 2 hours, we've delivered a stage 2. That's always been stage 1. That's always been our time goal, our cycle time for those activities, deeming that that's really good to achieve that. And so what's the total time? And the time is really interesting. So here's an example of how you can start to map time and understand of it, that, somebody expresses a need, lead goes to marketing or sales, an order is made, it goes through manufacturing or off the shelf, whatever, to distribution, the product gets sent to the client, satisfaction. How long did that take? And it completely depends. Remember, in my law firm, we started the same thing. It was 156 days, and I'll tell you what we discovered when we start looking at it as to why it was insane, and I'll come back to it. Maybe there's more involved and so forth, but you can start to map things out. Our goal is short cycle times, get things done as quickly as possible, because if we do that, we can understand how important quality is. The less time it takes, usually the better the outcome, because the longer it takes, the more stops and starts there are, the more chance for error, the more chance for forgetting things, so forth. A house at the end of my street has been finished, and it's being sold at the moment, and the people that did a subdivision, and they've selling the house, the old house, and they're now living next door in the new development. It's been going for 10 years. Okay. I would have so little confidence in that build that it stopped and started for 10 years compared to if it's just started and worked on for a year. Wouldn't you all think of how many things would have been forgotten and stuffed, and by the time they finished it, that was already rotting, and crazy. Understanding repetitiveness, rules that get things to work right. We have to have this continuous effort to get rid of quadrants 3 and 4. Get rid of waste, get rid of error. Variation's the enemy. That's why I really struggle when salespeople want to use one system when we're using another system. They're just one system versus another system. Like, yeah, maybe one's got some pros, others got some cons. But what happens is the more different systems we use, the more chance there is for error and problems. And the less support we get from the supplier, because we're not as big a client, because we're only giving them some of our work. So we don't matter as much. So I've always tried to concentrate our suppliers and focus on saying, well, no, this is how we're doing it for everybody. Because if we do it this way for everybody, we know how to do it. And when people want to do things differently is where we start to get problems and we start to get errors, because the team who's doing it says, well, 9 of our 10 salespeople do it exactly this way. Oh, forgot the 10th one. Yeah, that's right. You want it different. Forgot that, because the other 9 all do it one way. And it just leads to problems. So if we look at a quality versus defect environment, a quality environment is very visible. People know how it works. Therefore, it's predictable. It should be as simple as possible, and it's in a just as needed basis because we have confidence in it. A defect environment is where there's a lot of variation. There's a lot of individuality. We're uncertain because people do it differently. They don't follow the procedures. Therefore, it's more complex because we got a lot more things going on, and we better do a just in case mentality because we may just take longer and may be a problem. There's several items in your cycle time, and they're pretty cool to understand the different times. And if you're really mapping out the time it takes, you start to use symbols. When I was an auditor in accounting, we did flowcharts and of how the systems all worked. So the invoice comes into the shipping department, and we would have a certain symbol for that, and we'd have a certain thing for that. And then from there, it gets approved, and we'd have an approval symbol, and we would flowchart out the entire accounting system of every different part of it as part of our audit, so we can understand it and see where problems could happen. And this is exactly the same. And we have all these different times, which I'm going to go through, which make up your total time. And we're just going to go through them sort of like this. So your queue time is the amount of time while it just sits. So for example, if we get an email into Fletcher's, info@Fletcher's, and nobody looks at it on a basis of 24 hours, then you'd say queue time is 24 hours. Before we even start, it's just been sitting there for a whole day. So it's that idle time when nothing happens, and you're already 24 hours behind the 8 ball in that situation. So we deal with a company called, for us at home, called the Water People. They used to be down the street in High Street. Now they've moved up to Burwood Road, and we order our water filters from them for our, water tap and our coffee filters and refrigerator. And we've had them for years, and they've always been pretty good. We have a certain coffee filter for the water that we need. And I called them and said a couple of days ago, Monday, do you have this filter? Send us a picture by email. We'll have a look at it and let you know. All right, send it in. Don't hear back. Tuesday, I call them back and say, yesterday, midday, haven't had a response back to the email. You asked me to email it. Oh, yeah, that's right. I spoke to you on the phone. Oh, I sent it off to my manager. I don't think we have those, but I said, well, could you speak to your manager and send me an email today or call me back and let me know one way or the other whether you have them. It's now Wednesday at 20 to 4 and still haven't heard from them. And it just makes me not want to deal with Water People for anything anymore. Even though they've been pretty good, they clearly don't give a shit. And why is that? Is business that good that they don't care about losing customers? So if things sit and nothing happens, it's queue time. The technical and mental startup deals with interruptions. That every time you've stopped a process for one reason or another and you have to start it again, how much time does it take you to get reorientated with where you're at and what you need to do that? It's like if you're watching a TV show and you watch season number 2 and it ends, and then next year season 3 comes and you don't even remember what happened at the end of season 2. You might rewatch the last episode or 2 because you don't even remember. And it's the same thing. And Motorola, you might find this hard to believe, but their actual studies, this is white data, that for every minute of interruption, your technical mental startup time is multiplied by 3. So you lose the minute, plus you lose an extra 2 minutes of getting back into what you were doing. And so if you're interrupted, and the average white collar worker had some enormous amount of interruptions between people just calling them, people emailing them, people doing this, just constantly. And so many per hour. It was unbelievable how many interruptions that people had. And you think about the startup time, that if it's a minute interruption, you lose 3 minutes. If it's 2 minutes, you lose 6. Sounds exaggerated? That's what their data showed. So this whole startup time, remember, the more times you have to start something, the least effective it is, the more chance of error, the more time you spend on it, as opposed to just getting it done. So what do we say to salespeople? When you're prospecting, do it in blocks of time. Don't answer emails. Don't take inbound calls. Just prospect for 2 hours. Make as many calls as possible. Don't spend a whole lot of time entering it into your database. Get a sheet of paper and write it down. Let somebody else enter it later. The more calls you make in those 2 hours, then the better you're going to be. Book all your appointments late in the afternoon to do them all together, so you don't have to keep coming and going to the office and finding a place to park. All of those things is trying to save time. Process time is the actual only productive time in the whole cycle time. What does it actually take to produce this thing? So let's say that Melissa gets a request for a proposal point proposal. The request is very comprehensive. She's got everything she needs. She starts it, she finishes it in one go, and it took 17 minutes, and she emails it to the salesperson. And they're happy with it, no changes are necessary. You'd say the entire cycle time was 17 minutes. But what if Melissa didn't get all the clear instructions? She stops it, she sends an email to the salesperson, or goes over and they're on the phone, for a half hour, so she stops and does something else, then she's got to come back to it. Then she sends it to them and there's a problem. They're not happy with certain aspects because they didn't, sorry, forgot to tell you X or forgot to tell you Y. And you have to fix it. You might have to go back to 3/4 of the way through the proposal and change it and work your way back again. And now it might be, total cycle time might be 45 minutes for the same thing that was 17 minutes. Our wait time is this whole issue of it's not all that different than queue time, but queue time is defined as before we even start. Wait time is we got to transport it to the next person, and I've got to wait so I've sent an email, now I got to wait for that email response to come back. I want to get a plumber to come in and do something with our coffee maker. I can't until I find the filter. So for me now, I've had 2 days of wait time before I can book in the tradie just to come and do it. For no reason, just 2 lost days because of that. And I would say the cycle time at the moment is now up to 72 hours and counting. And it could have been resolved in 5 minutes if they answered my phone, if they answered my request when I called them up. Do you have a miter filter of this size? Right? Our move time is for things when it's physical. So a move time, for example, would be that we've created a stage 1 and we're going to go and deliver it. And we've created it and it's got to go out. Or you look at it and go, and this is what we found when we did the cycle time reduction in our insurance business. You would find this absolutely insane. But what would happen is there would be 2 solicitors, a solicitor and a partner right next to each other. And the solicitor would do the work, put it in their outbox, and the mail department would pick it up in their morning run. They'd take it back to the mail room. They'd do all their sorts. And then in the afternoon, they would come back and drop it in the partner's in tray, which was right next door to the solicitor's in tray. And therefore, immediately there was a 4-hour delay. And then the partner would make one comment, answer the question, make one comment, put it in the out tray. It wouldn't be picked up again till the morning. It wouldn't go back to the solicitor till the afternoon the next day. And they did that forever. And usually every new request sat in a partner's queue time for up to 2 to 3 weeks before they even looked at it, before it even got started. And then the solicitors would finish something, give it to the partner, and it could sit for another week in the partner's in tray before they looked at it. Anyway, all those points together equal your cycle time. So these issues of just waiting to get going because you're doing other things, getting interrupted continually, actually working on it, waiting for responses, waiting for something, and then having things be moved around, where they got to go, what they've got to do. There's lots of tools you can use, like everything else in quality, to help you. A flow chart provides a total overall view. It shows the task from start to finish, tells who does everything, and you look at it. So you've got, here's an example of somebody submitting a travel request. So the employee submits it, it goes through all these stages and gets disallowed or allowed and whatever. Same sort of process. And you got to remember that using visuals like this sometimes can be really, really helpful to understand how something happens. You know, even in a digital world, it's still really helpful as to why does it take so long? What are all the steps involved? And you have to realize that when you change things, it affects other things. So by mapping out, for example, there might be a document we get, whatever, let's call it a campaign agent form. And we want to bypass that for a certain reason. We have to work out what is all the uses for the campaign agent form. It might be 4 or 5 different reasons. And if we don't do it at all, it might affect 3 other areas. You got to always think about that when you're looking at these things. And sometimes by mapping it out as to who does what in what area, it starts to become quite sensible. So in this situation, this process took 4 weeks and 39 hours. This is a real process because of how it was done. And basically, it sat there for 4 weeks for the accounts team to reconcile at the end of every month. And just by changing it to just-in-time basis, that they reconciled it as the orders came through or the requests came through, it cut it down to 15 hours, the whole process. You also have a path to show how things physically can go. And again, a little less relevant in a digital world, but still very much involved in how does it lay out. What we did in that insurance department, just to simplify things, if people had a inbox thing for the department, it went in 1 tray. So they then had an in tray and 2 out trays. So if it was for the department, it went into 1 out tray. And if it was for the rest of the firm or mail, it went to the other. So therefore, the in ones, before the mail person left the department, they took all those, worked them all, and redistributed them before they left. So immediately we cut 4 hours out of the time it took for them, the mail, to move within the department. Just one little simple step. So seeing how things move around, particularly in a non-digital thing, was really very valuable. And that's where a flow diagram will show. Where is it actually going? Who's doing it? Who's dealing with it? Can we cut out some of this movement? Can we make things not take so long that way? And again, using symbols for what you're doing is a really positive way to do things. You know, operation is process, basically. You can name them whatever you want. When you look at something visually and each stage is done with a different symbol, it's much easier to see what happens. And if you're looking at your own time in doing something and you keep symbols for dollar productive, non-dollar productive as 2 different symbols. So when you're looking at things, you're not focusing on the dollar productive, you're focusing on the other stuff, the other symbol, and then all of a sudden it starts to jump out at you. Wow, look at all that non-dollar productive stuff I'm doing. And you can then start to even categorize things, so it's much easier to keep track of by having different symbols for the different, say, dollar productive or non-dollar productive. You might, as I said before, if you're doing Dr. Fred stuff, keeping track of your time for a month or 2 months or 3 months, you'd be using a document like this. These days, you can probably easily use one electronically, but you use a document like this to track, what am I doing every hour of my day? You know, how's it all working? What am I doing? So at the end of 8 hours, I worked 8 hours. How much of it's this? How much of it's that? And it becomes very simple to see. So actually keeping track of things in that sort of way helps you a lot to understand what you're actually doing. Here's a great little document that's got all the symbols in each step of what you're doing. You can identify what part of it is, where did it go, how much time was spent, and you can make these be whatever you want. It's just showing you different tools to help you to sort of understand and grasp, how you start to analyze things. And you usually don't get better if you don't have data to analyze it. Where is it going? Why is it taking so long? We do that. You guys know that in the last 18 months, we've significantly decreased the time it takes to process a listing. And we did exactly this. Sarah had to map out the entire as-is process for marketing. And we then looked at how could we streamline it and cut out things to make it faster without losing quality. How could we streamline it to improve the quality by making it quicker, less variation, less steps involved, less handling. And we massively changed the way we process a listing because of it. And we use exactly these tools, much to Sarah's annoyance that I kept insisting that she mapped it all out as to where it was and where it's going. And the reason we have to do that is when you map out the as is and you see all the subsystems that are associated with it, you start to realize that, hey, if we mess with this, it's going to mess with this and this and this. Yeah, we don't need this number. Oh, but finance does. And if we stop using that number, finance doesn't know how to track it. So you start to see things when you're putting them in these different sorts of diagrams. So what you're trying to really identify, is it a problem or is it a statement? A problem is, this is pretty good, except there's a few delays. A statement is, this is a really bad system. We need to start from scratch and just reinvent how we do it. When I did this the first time, when I did quality in my first firm in Freehills, and when I studied it, and I did a 2-week course on quality, and then I did a week's cycle time reduction when I was at, actually, no, I got a whole diploma in quality when I was at Freehills, and then I did cycle time reduction at PCR. I was assigned corporate travel to look at, and I went through Freehills travel, which involved booking flights, cars, hotels for partners and solicitors traveling throughout Victoria, Australia, and through Asia. And it was it was a statement in that this isn't a problem. This is a statement is this whole system is broken. The amount of time it took to arrange and book and how we were using all different travel people, all different hotels, all different airlines, no set rules on how partners flew or didn't fly, no real method of doing it. It was so ridiculous. And those are the days of faxing. And so a sales sec would be told, a legal sec would be told, the partner wants to fly to New Zealand on Monday. She'd fax that to the travel company. And a day or two later, the travel company would respond back to say, what time flights do you want? We have 10, 12, and 3 o'clock. That would then go to the partner, would take a couple of days to decide and come back and say, oh, how about 3 o'clock? Then they'd go back to the travel agent and say, oh, sorry, the 3 o'clock's now booked out, and it would start over again. It was the most insane process. And I went through a tender process with several different travel companies and settled on one called Voyager, where we completely mapped out a process to eliminate all of those back and forths and all of those time issues to make it a just-in-time booking process. We standardized the type of flights they went on, the type of hotels they stayed in, the rental car companies where we got them from. We got better rates on all of those by doing it. We standardized the times. We cut the average booking time from something like 7 or 8 days down to like an hour and a half. I'm not kidding. Massive change. And we worked out that on an annual basis, we were saving the firm in hard dollars, something like $1 million a year by the way we did it. It was unbelievable just by really mapping it all out. And when you looked at it, it was so insane how it was done and how much time was wasted trying to get these things done and approved. So you want to sort of understand this in terms of what are we trying to achieve from our customers? What do we want to achieve from our company? How important is this? Is this a big initiative or not? Travel was massive in our industry at the time, and it was a really huge project. And the issue will set the direction for your cycle time process. You know, how do we deal with this? How are we going to fix it? So when you start to understand the issue, is it cycle time? Is it taking too long? Is it delayed? Are we not getting customer satisfaction either internally or externally because it's taking too long? The issue with marketing, when we looked at it going back, were two things. One is it took too much time and effort, and there were too much variation, too many problems. And so we had to create a system that had a lot less steps, a lot less chance for error, and was faster. Took everyone less time to do. Look how much with Real-Time Agent we have streamlined the whole process of getting a listing done compared to what it was before. Management has to be behind it. You got to get the right people involved. Is it going to improve customer satisfaction? Is it going to reduce cost? Is it going to lead to fewer defects? Is it going to reduce waste? If none of those are answered, then why are you doing it? And when you start to look at it, can we achieve an outcome in all of those by doing it? And, you know, I said three years ago, our goal at Fletcher's was to make it easier for the salespeople to do what they're doing, to increase our margins and reduce our costs. And that was our real focus of doing what we did by introducing the global people, by introducing the new systems, by getting the technology both in sales and PM to automate everything, to get rid of the paper, to get rid of all the storage. The amount of time we spent on paper, getting it stored, getting it boxed, getting it cataloged, dealing with every year, getting rid of hundreds of boxes of storage and all of that stuff, and having to go back through it all to make sure we had all the right documents and we weren't throwing out key documents. You can't know how much time we spent on all that crap and how much room we had to have. In fact, we had to have storage outside of our offices just to store all the boxes when we ran out of room. Now we don't have any of that because we're all electronic. Everything's digital. We save hundreds and hundreds of hours. How much time have we saved in the marketing process on every single listing? If we could cut 2 hours at a processing time by 1,500 listings in a year, there's 3,000 hours we've saved. Think about that. So what you really want to know is when you start to look at something is what's our beginning and end point of this system? Realizing that every system interacts with other systems, but you can't look at everything. You gotta break it down into the silo systems, or else it becomes bigger than Ben-Hur. It just becomes really, really difficult to deal with. So when I created the KPIs for sales, I looked at it from the lead inquiry until it was listed, and from the listing until it was sold, as two distinct systems. What are the major functions that this thing goes through? Who do we have to involve to understand this entirely? So, for example, we have 2 new franchise offices coming on board. I can't say who yet. We're waiting day by day for them to be able to release that to us. On Monday of last week, we had a meeting with the 4 directors of the new business and their admin superstar. And on our team, we had Sarah, Caroline, and Beth to deal with 3 major aspects of marketing. Nelson, Jackie, and Harley. We had Patricia and Brooke, myself, and Tracy. And we all were on a team session going through a Trello checklist on everything to do with changing their offices over. So everybody involved in the process is there. We talked from beginning to end of the whole process of rebranding their offices and getting them ready to become Fletcher's. And we covered everything at one time. And you do that, everybody's on the same page. Everything's in one document. Everybody understands their roles. And that's this whole critical functioning thing. You got to get people involved from those different issues. As we said, people who do the work. The reason we got 3 from marketing is, well, Sarah knows everything about it, and she does. Ultimately, Beth and Carol are going to do a lot of the details, so why not have them hearing it firsthand and getting it dealt with? It's far more effective than Sarah then trying to rebrief them. And, you know, every time you do that, you're playing telephone where communication could get slightly changed. Things get lost. It's very difficult to get 100% of that information conveyed again exactly the same. And also, you know, what people don't realize is that things that we're talking about in technology or in phone systems or whatever can affect marketing as well. It's all interrelated. So having all the people hearing all of it at one time is that product design where you're involving the engineers, the marketing people, the salespeople, customer research, the admin people who are going to have to deal with it, all of it together in a quality team to work out the outcome. Everybody involved that you need to. So remember, Pareto principle, that very few things are going to lead to your outcome. And you really need to focus on what are those key things. As is, you remember we did the 5-stage planning process in our first module. You start with the as is, right? So what's our current situation? Then you do your analysis to why, then you go to your should be, where do we want it to be? Then you look at your gap, and then you look at your analysis, your reporting, you start over. So we need to know where we are to start with before we can move on, because we have to understand the system in its entirety. We have to know all the subsystems that rely on this stuff. So after Sarah mapped out marketing, we went to finance, we looked through customer service, we dealt with Tracy from Box and Dice's point of view to understand. We showed it to the Melissas of the world. We had them in. We had some salespeople. We went through Jeremy, a couple others, and said, is this right? You know, is this all the things that happen here? Do you use any of this information anywhere else? Do we miss anything? All the key stakeholders to make sure that we had captured the as is correctly of what we're doing now, because that's got to be our starting point, or else we screw up other things. So we want to have that current snapshot, you know, of where we're at. We're trying to understand all of these things, which I was just referring to, is who's all involved, what suppliers, what customers are affected by it, what interfaces are there with it, what subsystems spin off of it. And I'll tell you, as I said, things become bigger than Ben-Hur when you start to realize how many systems there are related to those primary systems. You know, a big issue for us is that the Box and Dice client account number that's allocated to each new property is the same trigger for Box and Dice, real-time agent, campaign agent, the portals. And so everything begins with that. So for example, you can't start a process outside of Box and Dice and have it work because you need that number to start with. So if you start booking something through somewhere else, so we had to integrate when we wanted to start the marketing before the listing was secured. You want to do a marketing thing, we had to get Box and Dice talking to Campaign Track, or Campaign Track talking to Box and Dice to get that number sent from Box and Dice into Campaign Track, so we could actually do that and have it linked. So everything we do involves around that number. That affects all of our processes, if that makes sense. That's why you get so locked into a CRM, because that key number is everything for everything we do. You start to then, when you're looking at the as is, you start to work out, what are the disconnects? What are the problems? Where are the problems happening in this that's causing us to think? And remember, if it's a problem, you're going to fix the as is. If it's a statement, you're going to throw it out and start over. But you have to understand it to start with. And Sarah and I don't always see eye to eye. Ultimately, we do, because I'm the boss. and she's a great influencer. She usually convinces me of her point of view. But when we started this process, we knew we wanted to get rid of the current system. And Sarah didn't really want to document the whole as is. And I forced her to, because it's the only way you can see everything else that's affected, and you can see the problems. So we're not just repeating those problems in something new. We're not throwing out something that we actually need. So when you start to look at the problems, it could be the system itself, it could be a subsystem, it could be the interface that you're dealing with it. Is stuff missing? Is stuff go missing with it? Is it unnecessary? Are we doing stuff that's just a waste of time? Processes get created for a reason in a point in time based on that current environment and what you're doing. But as you evolve and you start changing your technology and you change your requirements and the legal requirements change, you may not need to do that anymore. Or you may need to do something different, more substantial. Or does it just not work? Because it's just bad. It's bad technology, bad hardware, whatever it might be. We want to understand those issues and study them, because they're going to affect what we do. We want to make sure we understand where it starts and who does it, what happens next, who does that. This is that whole flow chart. Are there any decisions at each step? Because if so, we need to understand, do we need to replicate those? Do we need to get rid of them? Do we need approvals at that point? You know, I was on a director's meeting this morning, and Rob Fletcher and I approve a lot of the new listings. And Rob asked me a question about something we changed recently regarding that you can't have 0 on the marketing if you have a marketing on the authority. And he said, are we meant to reject the new listing? I said, no, I said, actually, I want to check with Jeremy or Sarah. And Jeremy came on the line. I said, Jeremy, refresh my memory. I believe what we agreed, we didn't want to hold up the listing. And it's for the sales secretaries and marketing to make sure that if there is marketing, then the authority is updated to reflect that. But we're not going to reject approving it based on that, because then it holds everything up. And Jeremy agreed. We moved on. Each step, what's supposed to happen? Who's meant to do it? Is steps being repeated? You know, is, again, if things not necessary or you know, should be, then can be, if it's a problem, it can be a variation of the as is. We can see, here's the 3 blockages, here's the 2 problems. Otherwise, it's really good. Or the should be can be a completely re-engineered process. So when we, and this is true, when we mapped out the insurance process on white butcher board, the as is took, and I'm making the numbers up, but I'm not far off, it was like 150 sheets of butcher paper around a giant boardroom wall, all the way around, to map out the entire process of as is, because of how many things just went back and forth and back and forth. And when we finished, we got it down to 56, I think was the number, thereabouts, 56 pages of a third of the whiteboard. We had eliminated 2/3 of steps in terms of total volume to fix the process, to cut the days down as much as we did and all that stuff. So our should be is, how can we do it better? Do we have to do it differently? What can we do without? Like, what are we doing now that we just don't need to do anymore? We start to look at, do we have the right software? Do we have the right hardware? Do we have the right suppliers in this? Should we put it out and review what's out there at the moment? You know, when we're looking at new systems. So for example, when I wanted to get to an automated sales process, I reached out to everyone in the market who was creating something. And I found the guys at Real Time Agent, which was called Bid Tracker at the time. I got them in. I really liked them. They were very early in the process. I thought that these guys are industry friendly. They're good programmers. They understand our industry. They've got funding behind them. And I reached out to the G11, which was the G12 at the time, 12 of the big Melbourne firms who had done things together. I got them all together in a boardroom to see a presentation by 3 different suppliers, knowing I wanted real-time agent, but I got 3 different ones in, and I said to these 12 firms that if we all choose somebody different, we're all going to end up with systems that can't be supported, and we're going to invest in something, and then we're going to have to change it because they won't survive. If we all choose the same one and we make it the way we want it, we're all going to get something great. Anyway, that's the history and how we got to real-time agent. And we agreed on that. And we helped engineer real-time agent to suit the big firms in Melbourne and to be what we wanted it to be. And we've worked with them to implement all the additional stages of things we want. So that's exactly what you do. Who should be the supplier? What should be the inputs and outputs in the system? What are the subsystems that flow off of it? And we worked out all these things that we could do through real-time agent. We could do authorities, we could do contracts, and we could do concierge. And in fact, this morning, Caroline and I were briefed on now your porter is fully integrated into real-time agent, and they're getting a 90% strike rate per sale of people signing up for your porter on the first round of tests, real tests with real clients, 90%. We probably have 10% right now. And that's why we want concierge going through that, because it's going to massively increase the amount of people who sign up for our, ancillary products. Then have this gap, figure out what do we have to do. So are we going to throw it out and start over, or are we going to fix it? What's going to be an impact on our, and so when we rebuilt the new sales process of marketing, we had a debate. Are we going to create a whole new thing sitting on the side? So we're running our old way. We create a whole new thing on the side, and when it's ready and working, we just throw out the old one and bring in the new one. Or do we replace bit by bit and keep it going as we go? And we decided the bit by bit could work. And so stage by stage, we introduced a new section of how we did marketing, because that way we were getting the fixes quicker, and it wasn't trying to teach everybody some big thing at one time. And that's how we did that. We were really thinking about our team and the impact they would have by changing the way we do marketing. And of course, you have to implement and monitor what you're doing at stage 5. I just have to see, I think my battery's 20%. Just bear with me a minute. I'm just going to plug back in. Two things from a quality point of view on this. Number one, if I was plugged in before you guys got started, we wouldn't have just had that interruption. Number two, if I didn't take time to notice my screen dimmed a little bit and I was going to run out, my computer could have just turned off, and then we would have had a 5-minute break while we tried to get the computer back on. Quality. So, what we're trying to do with our teammates is to appreciate that time matters. To understand that by cutting down the time it takes to get things done, we improve in all those ways we've talked about. To understand the tools that can be used to document and do things. To understand the different elements of cycle time. Eliminate the back and forths. And, we've been working with Campaign Track to streamline the way photos are done. And I think, Sarah, they're almost ready. And probably by when we come back in February, we'll be able to fully integrate all the photos that come through right into Campaign Track, get straight through to everybody in an approval process. What they tick and what they click will automatically feed into the artwork, saving all this different stuff. Huge amount of time on photos, because we're trying to integrate it, because we're trying to stop how many different steps and how many different things we have to use and duplicate. And we need to really understand the beginning and the end in each element within cycle time. And you come up with an actual and a theoretical cycle time, The actual is what it's taking. The theoretical is what it could take. You know, and when I told my managing partner that I could get travel arrangements down from taking 8 hours of labor and 7 days or 10 days, I could get it down to 2 hours of labor over a 1 day period. He was like, you know, how can we do that? And we did it because he was a partner who traveled all the time, and he knew how ridiculous it was trying to get arrangements made. Do you know they opened up Queensland from the 1st of December for us? You know, we can now travel to Queensland. In a matter of about 15 minutes, I booked a holiday. I've organized the accommodation, the flights. I've got to do one more accommodation in it, all booked and done, and you know, in a few minutes. And when you compare that now to what it used to take to arrange travel and how long it would take, it's just insane how if you're efficient, you can do things really, really fast. Theoretical cycle time. You know, what could we do this in? Let's give ourselves a real stretch goal here. It's currently taking a total cycle time of 72 hours. This could be done in 6 or 4. You know, Proposal Point was designed to make it significantly easier for you guys to put proposals together quickly. Take a lot less time than the way we used to do it. Real-time agent, instead of, can you imagine going back just two years ago that we had to come back to the office and send an email to everybody about a new listing, and that paperwork had to go there, and then we had to save it, and we had to send it to the client, and we had to send it there, and then we had to print it to store it. And now, you know, you do your authority, you push a button, and it emails it out to all interested parties. Documents come right back in and get saved into your thing. Imagine how much time we have saved people to be able to focus more on dollar productivity than we had before. Budget what you really want to do. What's our targets and our target dates for making it happen? Who has to be involved in it? What's really important? And this is where you focus on that 80-20. Where are we really going to focus on those key 20 things to get 80% of the bounce as quickly as possible? Prioritizing the right things. Use the different tools to help. Are we documenting the system? Are we showing the flow of it all? Do we want to understand who the different players are in it? Have we worked out the bug sheet as to what the problems are? You know, all these tools, it's like having in your garage, you have a toolbox. And if you grab a screwdriver when you need a hammer, you know, my father-in-law taught me, my ex-father-in-law, who's passed away now, taught me a lot about renovating. And Ted used to say, as long as you have the right tool, every job's easy. You know, if you have the right size saw, you have the right size hammer, the right screwdriver, it's easy. If you don't have it, it's really, really difficult. Try screwing a screw in when you don't have the right size screwdriver. You know, so this is the same thing. You guys have learned a lot of tools through Covey and this and TQS and to do and deal with things to help you grow your toolbox to be more effective in your job. And quality is the same. There we go. I didn't try to race through it, but I wasn't sure how long it would take. Questions, comments, thoughts about all that stuff that we just covered? Nobody's got anything? Come on.
Bradley, I just wanted to say that all this information is really timely, given that I'm going to be doing a strat meeting with my entire team, and a lot of the things that you've gone through are things that we'll be incorporating into that, things that we can really think about to help us, you know, understand our processes and where we can do things better. So yeah, it's really, really good stuff.
Excellent. And Morgan, are you on the line with Boyce? You mentioned to me the other day that you were incorporating a lot of this into your thinking with your sales team, and that. Can you shed some light on some of the things that you know you're doing as a result?
Yeah. So we were looking at changing the off the top fee, and you can imagine that would have yeah, potentially a lot of negative reaction. It hasn't been changed in well over 20 years. So I was able to sort of apply everything we've talked about over the, you know, the last couple of months. And yeah, sort of planned it out, leaked it to a few people, got some people on board, explained some, you know, to some of the key players what we were trying to do and why. And when we launched it, it was absolutely brilliant. I was really well prepared, knew where I was going, had a start, a finish, and an end, and I added a new chapter. I called it The Future. And we got probably 90% of the team over the line. It was, yeah, it was a really hard topic, but it went across so well.
Great. I remember when I first started working with you guys way back when, John Ross was this really innovative director, and he was constantly coming up with new ideas all the time, but the team's ability to implement those things was very limited because, one, he had too many ideas too fast all the time, and people weren't skilled to actually implement it. So a lot of the ideas fell flat, you know, and remember the idea and implementation thing, that every idea could be a 10 and every implementation can be a 10, or it can be a 1, you know. And I'm glad to see, you know, you guys are, as I've seen the growth, you guys are much better at implementation than, you know, you initially were. That's good. Other comments, guys? Sarah, I wouldn't mind hearing from you about, you know, when we redid the marketing and, you know, particularly your initial reluctance to try to document it and all of that, but ultimately, you know, how it ended up as a success story.
Yes, thank you for focusing on my so-called reluctance. I actually was going to chime in anyway. So yeah, I didn't see this whole presentation, but yeah, I guess, you know, what we basically did was, as Bradley sort of alluded to before, is, you know, literally go through, you know, each and every step of the process through marketing, from, you know, what the sales secretaries and PAs do to finance and things like that. And we were able to, you know, from a whole sort of overview look at the processes, we, you know, were able to cut out tasks, you know, right from the get-go, because I think what you find in a lot of organisations, and, you know, certainly an organisation that's been around as long as Fletcher's, when you move to new systems and stuff like that, there's things that people do, they don't even know why they do it anymore. You know, they're just doing it because the person before them did it, and, you know, they keep doing it. So actually Amy's not on here, but, you know, we were so happy because we just eliminated these whole things to do with paper, which was actually quite timely coming into COVID, because we're completely paperless now. And, you know, we just used to do things simply because it was the way it was always done. And I think until you question these things sometimes, you know, you could potentially keep doing that for longer than you have to. But I guess one thing I was going to say that's not really 100% related just to that process, but I think when you're looking at these sorts of things, I think it shows you how much all the other stuff we've gone through over the weeks with Bradley are important, because it's not just, oh, hey, this is a great new system, we can cut out all this time and whatever. You actually have to use those other tools and skills to actually get your team on board as well. I certainly know when we moved to Trello, and I think I've said this before, you know, it was really hard for the team to, you know, when you've got a lot of people, I don't want to name names, but there's a lot of people who are so stuck in what they used to do that it's very hard for them to make a change. And so you've really got to, you know, work hard and, you know, be a leader in those situations. But anyway, that's probably more than you wanted to hear, but
also I think, no, it's good, Sarah. But also I think that you and I both, and Amy and everyone else involved in the marketing process, when you actually documented it all out and we sat in the boardroom and we looked at what we did, it was probably illuminating for all of us to think, God, there's so many steps, there's so many people involved in all this, and there's so many back and forths that until you fully document it out, you don't appreciate that. And when we had that, we got in the engineer who owns and designed Campaign Track. We got in Neo. We got in Campaign Agent, and all of our key players at Fletcher's. So when we, and Box and Dice, and so when we were, and Real Time Agent were there. So when we were re-engineering our whole process, we had all these people in there who were saying, we can do that. We can fix that for you. We can do that. You don't have to do that anymore. We can actually do that in real-time agent, or hey, we can do that in Box and Dice. We can do that in Campaign Track. And it enabled us to cut out so many things and not reinvent things. And, you know, it was a great process. I think Melissa was in that same session and Jeremy was there. And it was a great process to actually look at and streamline with our partners to integrate everything. And they start to go, hey, we could, you know, the whole photo thing I just mentioned about came out of that session where they told us about this photo system that they've developed for themselves with their own photography company. And we said, well, we want that. And that would save us a huge amount of time. And now that's coming pretty close to being fruition a year later that we'll have it, or even more than a year.
Yeah, I think if you're not doing a job every day, sometimes you don't actually know what people are doing to get the job done. And I've found that with my team, you know, they'll tell me something and I'm like, why are you doing that? Like, that just seems crazy, a waste of time. Because I couldn't imagine doing that on a day in, day out basis. So I've always tried to tell them, you know, if you're doing something and you're wondering why you're doing it, tell me, because maybe we don't have to do it anymore.
Is there anyone else got observations or comments?
Yeah, Bradley, Ian here.
Hi, Ian.
Yeah, further to what Sarah was saying, you know, you propose these changes, you know, cutting down from the wait time in reception at the law firm from 13, 15 minutes down to 1 minute, 19, which is amazing. And also, you know, the partners in trays, you know, you get them saying, oh, well, look, you know, that's just how we do things here, you know, so, you know, just how do you overcome that opposition? Because you're going to get resistance to change. And so how do you deal with all of that?
Well, as Morgan said in his talk a couple minutes ago, you know, it's about thinking holistically about getting the idea across and being a successful implementation. So you have to think about, well, who are the key stakeholders? What's going to be the resistance? What are the real positive selling points to all this? You know, so you're really preparing really well. So when you actually do it, you have a really great chance of success because you've already dealt with a lot of those issues. I think, you know,
so you tell them what you're going to do and you do it, and then they see the result and they say, well, wow, you know, that's a result.
Well, part of it is telling them, not just telling them, but involving them so they have buy-in in the process, and also understanding the why. You know, why are we trying to do this, and why is this going to help? For example, if we can say to ourselves, if I can get a couple of salespeople to sit in the room and we can say, hey, we can take 4 hours out of the processing time to get your listings done quicker. We can save you 50% of the time that you're now spending, and we can improve, we believe, from getting 87% or 90% right to getting 98% right by doing this. They go, yeah, I want in. I want to do this and I want it to happen. So, you know, people have to know what's in it for them and why should they care about it. And if we say, well, it's going to save the firm money, they don't care unless they're a director, or they really care about, you know, those sort of things. But if you say it's going to affect you directly, it's going to improve your time, it's going to make it easier for you, it's going to make it more streamlined, you're going to have happier customers at the other end, your salespeople are going to be so much happier with this, then people want to buy into it. So, you know.
And I guess if they're involved, you know, they'll even, maybe down the track, they'll even sort of think, hey, it was my idea, you know. So.
Well, that's part of it. It's the whole buy-in, that they were involved in it all. And, you know, so you get stakeholders from every department. So you get people like Melissa and Nicole, who are champions in the whole marketing process change from the user's point of view. So they could say to their team, this is a good thing. This is positive. You guys need to embrace this because it's going to save us all a lot of time. So you get champions in amongst them that are going to be able to do that as well. And that's really important. So that's why you involve people from all different disciplines and try to get champions involved. And, you know, we get people like Melissa and Nicole because They've been around a long time. They're very sensible. They've got a lot of sway with the people around them. You know, when we're having trouble with a director today over something, I won't say which one, Caro's response is, I'll go on to his PA and I'll talk to her. Because if I get her on board, then it'll be easy to get the director to understand. And that's what you do. You know, you make it a holistic pitch from one end to the other to get the implementation to work. Because there's no use having a great idea if you can't implement it. And, you know, we all only have a certain amount of energy for change. And the more we can focus that energy to get it right the first time with the least amount of battles, you know. So when we were doing real-time agent, we got 50% of the people over easy, and we had 50% being recalcitrant. And we had to then just go and work on each one of those. And we just had to, and we had to involve the Melissas of the world to get Riley on board. And if Riley's not on board, then some of his other key people wouldn't be on board. And we then got to the point where we said, all right, we've given you plenty of time. From the 31st of December, we are not accepting authorities unless they're done through real-time agent. You got no more time, you're done. And we did, you know, and that's what we did. And we get the last ones over. And you have to do that. You have to be time bound. You have to get the right champions working on it. You have to get that critical mass. Remember, change management. 50% of the people will just go with the flow. 25% are going to be no. 25% of it, 25% are absolutely love change. 50% are the sway factors, and 25% are like no. And you've got to work on that sway factor to get them over here to where you can say to the rest, you got no choice. This is what works. This is how we're doing it. Now's the time to do it, because if not, we're turning you off. You know, you got 3 more weeks and you're not going to be able to use this old system anymore. And that's how you get the last naysayers over. You just make it an ultimatum. But you're not stupid. You know, today I had a meeting with the Waverly office. They're all Chinese. And Christy mentioned that some of her clients who are in China, because of recent bans, they can't accept emails, so we can't send them authorities to rate my real-time agent. And she said, for the 1 in 20 vendors I have who are coming from China, can I print out the authority and mail it to them? And I said, yes, you can. That's the 80-20 rule. You know, I get a call once every 2 weeks from a salesperson who says, my client refuses to use campaign agent. They just want to pay for their marketing up front. Can I just do it through Fletcher's? And my answer is always, you're getting it up front. Yes, fine. Because you're going to have those variations. But if 8 out of 10, or, you know, in our case, 9.5 out of 10 are done the way we want, then you win. Other comments, guys, thoughts, questions?
Brady, I have a question. I just wanted to find out the daily diary, where you're mapping out from the time that you come in to the time you leave, what you're doing, and what is the best, the least amount of time one should spend in terms of like 2 weeks, a month, to get an accurate picture of? Yeah,
it depends how much variation you have in your routine. So cycles for most businesses, you know, are, if I'm Jacqueline, then in a month, I'm going to see pretty much everything I do, because it's an accounting cycle. Okay. If I'm Melissa, it's quite possible that my cycle might be a lot shorter than that. So you have to sort of think about how often you're renewing what you do, or you might look at it and go, well, if I looked at a month, that's going to be a pretty accurate reflection. Dr. Fred will say 3 months. Right, for salespeople, because seasons change, things change. You go on holidays, you do other things. He's a 3 month. I always think more about the cycle. Once you've sort of finished your cycle, you've probably done it. What I say to the new, when I would get a graduate on each year, and I'd get a graduate on for a couple of years as an assistant to me, I would say that what I need you to do is reflect on the fact that the first year, everything you do is going to be new. All of the things we do, like this training program we're going to schedule, the different training events that happen, the social events that you're going to do, the compliance stuff for BLA, all that's going to be new the first year. But so you're just going to follow what we tell you to do. But in year 2, I want you to innovate and figure out how you can do all of things better and smarter and faster the next time, right? And it's the same thing in your time cycle. Like if in a month you've really nailed it, you've got everything that you pretty much do, it's probably enough. If you think, no, it's probably a couple months to do all the things I do, then do it over 2 months.
That's great. Thanks, Brady.
Other questions, comments? Okay. Our session on Monday will be presentation skills, and it may not, I don't remember how long it is, but it might only be an hour and a half or an hour in something. And we'll be finishing on that. That'll be our last session. So, and I believe that presentation, you know, Morgan's presenting to his sales team a new proposal. Ian's talking about, you know, how you get change across. Anita, you're running a workshop with your people. Understanding the fundamentals of how you present and get a convincing argument across is really, really important. And it doesn't matter whether it's for one person or 500 people. If I'm a salesperson and I can learn how to put a presentation together to be more effective in the lounge room, or I'm Sarah, who's going to address, along with Beth, address the partners, the directors of Fletcher's again in a week and a half's time on our marketing program and get that across in an effective way. You know, understanding the principles of effective presentation are really, really important in getting that end product done. So I encourage you guys to embrace that. I'll be sending out a whole bunch of supporting documents about presentation skills, and I think you guys will find that an interesting module. Can I ask that Morgan and Anita just stay on the line for a minute when everyone else hangs up? But thanks everybody for your time today, and enjoy yourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Bradley.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Sorry I was late.
That's okay. You weren't even meant to be on it.
I live in Mitcham, so I had to go back and do the groundwork with that one. I was like, so yeah, we made it. So double whammy. Thank you.
All good.
My camera on. Okay.
Caroline, you want to hang up? Ian, we're finished, guys. I just want to talk to Morgan and Jing, if you want to hang up as well. I don't know. Carolyn might have left the room. All's good. Just mentioning to Anita before you got online, Morgan, that I'm going to come to your office probably the 30th of June when I'm in Wellington and spend at least a day or possibly 2, depending on what you guys want done. John and I have just agreed that I will do that because I'm going to the South Island for a holiday, and I'll pop up to Wellington before I go. I was saying to Anita that I've raised this with John before, but I haven't got it over the line. But 2 things. One is you guys should think about what would be most effective for your teams, given what you've just been through with this. And there might be some of these modules that you feel would be really worthwhile to run for your own teams, or whatever else, you know, as we've done in the past. The other thing is, as I was saying to Anita, is I've had really great success in, and I mentioned it John before, but I didn't convince him, was my first book, A Good Man, a Great Dad, and a Loving Husband, is a really good business read for people. It's very practical. And when I've run it for conferences and run it for other firms, it's been a really super positive experience that everybody gets a book. They're pre-autographed by me and John. We each write a personal message, and everyone gets a book at the end of the session. It's about an hour and a half to do the session, to see the book. And then everybody gets the book as a giveaway for your whole team. Is a really positive thing. And it's very easy to do. You know, I just send them over, ship them over. You ask the price. The books are $25 each, Anita, and plus whatever the shipping cost is to send a box. And what I do is I just get a list of everybody's names ahead of time. I did it last year for Strathfield in Sydney. I've done it in Melbourne. I did it for the Lee Woodward's Principals Conference for 300 people. We just get it ahead of time, pre-autograph everybody's by name. We put the name on the front. John gets them all. He does the same thing. He writes a nice personal message to everybody. And then we run the thing. So if you wanted me for a day or 2 days, but if it's a day, we do that in the morning, you know, finish with a nice morning tea and everybody gets a book and it's really super positive. And then we could do something else in the afternoon, or I'm happy to do 2 days. I just need to, we said to John, we'd talk again next year, but if you guys are having meetings with him, maybe you can discuss those and we could work on coming up with a plan a bit sooner rather than later. And I'll know what my time is necessary in there, whether it's 1 day or 2.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that'll be really exciting. Bradley, I just wanted to find out, obviously you got your job that you do and it seems like it's incredibly busy, but do you actually do consultative work other than just come and do like present or teach us the way you are? But for the division, the Body Corp division, it's been going on for such a long time, but I want to change things. I want us to be the most successful Body Corp division in the country. And that means that we need to rethink a lot of things. And so some of the stuff that I've written down, which I'm going to be doing, I'm taking the 10th of December out with my team to look at a whole bunch of different stuff. Do you kind of, can you present on snippets of it? I know you said that, but you know, maybe we should just chat. I'll send you an email. You can kind of let me know what your fees would be, because as much as I can go back and look at all the videos and put content together, it would be really great if you could probably actually work with us through those things, because you've been around the block many, many more times and longer than I have, and I'm still very new to this whole thing, and I want to make sure we get it right. Like, honestly, I just want us to move forward and be super successful.
To answer your question, I've probably spent 8 to 10 days with the professionals with your brand over the time, and the answer is yes. I do consulting on that basis, come and re-engineer a department for 2 or 3 days, or run like I do with John the last few times is a day and meet with different groups and do different things. I have to admit, I don't know anything about Body Corporate. We don't have a Body Corporate department. I've never consulted on it at all. So I can talk about processes. What we normally do is, if it's about the business overall, me. If it's about sales, me. If it's about property management, whilst I know a lot, I'd usually say, let's get Andrew Patterson, who's a guru in it, to do that, not me. But we don't do Body Corporate at all. So whilst I can help you with some broad processes, broad principles, I'm probably not the right person to really look at the way you run Body Corporate. To give you an example, we've completely re-engineered property management over the last couple of years, and I shared that with your property management people leadership team when I was there last year, and we're having great results from it. And but yet we've still engaged a higher level property management expert to come in and review what we've done, and to tell us what else we should do and how would you rate what we've done so far. And we're doing that. I don't know when he's coming in, but we've engaged him. And so I think in Body Corporate, you probably want to find a real guru. For example, in Canberra, there is the Independent Property Group, which is the leading firm in Canberra. They own 3 brands: Blackmore's, Independent Property Group, and something else. And Stan, somebody is the guy I deal with there. We went to visit them, and they have a massive Body Corporate department, and they're a really, really efficient firm. Like, they're really smart in sales, PM, and Body Corporate, and they do projects and developments. They're really amazingly switched on business, probably one of the best real estate things I've sort of ever seen. They would probably have that sort of guru who could provide consulting to you on Body Corporate and be a lot more effective than I could.
Okay,
but if it's on broad principles of working with your team, looking at things, but I just don't have the intimate knowledge of how Body Corporate works enough. Same with property management. Whilst I'm the 80-20 guy in property management, because Andrew and I he briefs me every week, and I'm the one who's driven a lot of the big changes he's made. But when it gets to the detail of how they do everything, I wouldn't have a clue. That's why I've got to get Andrew to. So like when I consult, and I don't do as much these days because I'm really busy with Fletcher's, but when I go and consult to a business, when they say this and they want property management, what I'll do is I'll go and I'll do 2 days and Andrew will do a day. you know, and the same thing we do with our franchise offices is I go on certain things. I'll do sales, and Andrew will go and do PM. Tracy does database and compliance, and Sarah goes and does brand management. And, you know, we sort of give it to who's the best expert.
Okay. So two of the things that I think would be good for us to start off with is like obviously the moments of truth, and then the cycle, the one that we've just done now, because I think they kind of go hand in hand. Would you be okay with me to, as I put my presentation together, and that if I've got any questions to email you, and you can maybe just help me clarify?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And if you wanted me to run any of that by Zoom to your team, we can do that and just work on an hourly rate, whatever it is, you know, to do it however much time you want. But I could run those sessions like this for your team.
Yeah.
Any of the sessions that we've covered, or, you know, or any other topics you wanted to run by me.
Okay, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, but I will be there, you know, 30 June, 1 July, 1 or 2 days, whatever you guys want. Last time I was there, I did the morning with sales and the afternoon with PM, I think. And, you know, it's up to you guys. But I just think the book thing goes over really well. It's not about selling 50 books or whatever you do. I don't care about that. It's really uplifting. People just love it. They get a really great session, and they get to go home with something. And that's what people always really like. And I know John likes that emotional, positive connection.
Yeah.
I thought I might have done that last time, but he didn't take it up.
No worries. Okay, so I'm going to do this on the 10th of December. So if you want to check your diary and let me know if you've got any availability, and then I'll just email you. We can talk from there.
Yeah, I'll just tell you right now, cycle time reduction, get onto it. On the 10th of December, I am free the whole day at the moment.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Nothing there's internals that I can move. So
okay, I would definitely like to book you for that and the moments of truth.
All right, well,
so we
send
can
me an email
with
with what you want, and that way I can, and the time suggested, and I can book those in and
okay, fantastic, awesome.
Okay, Bradley, I'll go through some of the sessions we had and just go over that's probably the most poignant for my team, and I'll come back to you, mate. But yeah, look, I hear what you're saying about the book. I've read the book, and yeah, it's a nice, easy, good feeling, positive presentation, I would imagine. So yeah, that could be something we could consider. Just got to get John over the line, that's all.
Yeah, all good.
Especially for your newbies, Morgan. What a great way to induct them.
Yeah, look, so what Anita's saying, you won't recognise anybody, Bradley. We've probably only got about 20% of the salespeople you saw last time. and that's been a really good thing too.
You had a really old team, and
yeah,
you know, we talked about it was, you know, Mother's Club and Father's Club, and, you know, so I'm not surprised that you've, you know, had that generational changeover. And remember, with your teams in the past, I've done a 2-day Fletcher's Way course for your team, remember? And that was quite illuminating for a lot of people in your team. And we've only improved Fletcher's Way since then. So if that's something, again, that interests you for your sales team, you might recall we did that. I don't think we did it at John's camp. I think we did it somewhere else when we first ran Fletcher's Way for your team. Remember one of your sales guys, when I started the day with the fish video on culture, and one of your guys came the next day with those chocolate coated marshmallow fish and threw everybody one. That was so brilliant, because the video is about fish and how they throw fish at people in a fish restaurant. And that was just classic. I know you said he was a bit of a flake and not so, you know, a positive guy from the office, but I thought the fish thing was absolutely brilliant when he did that.
No, that was at the golf club. Is that the one where we did the different coloured hats? Yeah, no, that was good. So that's on the agenda too to consider.
All right. So yeah, again, if you have a lot of new people, running a 2-day Fletcher's Way is quite a brilliant thing for people to learn, because there's so much sales knowledge in that. That's really sales orientated, but there's so much on it. And, you know, as I said, we've only gone from strength to strength in terms of what's in Fletcher's Way, in terms of how you do everything from prospecting through client for life. So that could be something. And, you know, you'll find that 80-20 rule, you guys might be doing 40 or 60% of it, but there's another 40 or 60 that are new things for people and going, oh, right, wow, we could do that. We should do that. We should do that. And I know when I addressed your team, I had my son Landon with me when we ran one, and I could tell you that at that point, 80% of what we were telling you, your team weren't doing. You know, we were, at that point, we were so far ahead of how you guys were doing things. And John was saying, well, our goal is to be best practice. I said, well, John, you're a best practice principal, but your team is way far off being best practice. If we were in your market, we'd smash you. We'd absolutely smash you the way we do real estate. And we're in such incredibly competitive environment where we are. Some of the best real estate agencies on the planet are in our footprint. And it's really hard, you know, and we're not the leader in our market. You know, it's really, really tough. Jealous Craig, Marshall White, Kane Burton are three of the greatest brands on the planet. And, you know, we deal with companies like, you know, Nelson Alexander, who like us, they own 23 of their own offices, and they're all in our, you know, realm. And Jealous Craig are turning over as an organization $80 million. Marshall White are turning over $100 million of commissions. So, you know, we've had to become so good at all these micro steps to win, because we're not competing with mom and dad agencies who you can win a listing real easy. You know, we're competing with the best agents on the planet. Seriously, you know, like incredibly dedicated agents who are writing $1 million, $2 million, $3 million a year in commissions.
Wow.
You know, we're talking about that today, that in our Manningham footprint, when our directors meeting this morning, we're number 3 in Manningham, which is a municipality of 100,000 homes. We're number 3 in the whole municipality. Number 1 and number 2 are 1 and 2 of something like the 5 biggest real estate offices in all of Australia. And that's who we have to compete with in that footprint.
Yeah.
You know, and between them, they're doing about $30 million in sales, which is as much as my 7 offices, or even when we had 10 offices, now we have 7 to 3 became franchises. They're doing that in 2 offices, and that's who we have to compete with.
That's crazy.
I know. And you know, Marshall White, who are just, you know, down the street, they have 4 offices now, and they're $100 million in turnover out of 4 offices.
Wow.
You know, so it's like, so we have to be so good at what we do to win, and we do win. You know, we're really good, and you know, we're number 2 or 3 in all those municipalities we're in, which is really saying something given the size of those beasts. You know, so if you wanted to do like a Fletcher's Way, again, that's something we could do, but that is really 2 days, unless we cut out some of the modules. It's 2 days at Fletcher's to do it. Yeah, anyway, give it some thought, but
yeah, will do.
And I'll send you both a link that I've sent out that has my second book on it, which isn't for sale. It's just for family and friends and people who've read my first book. And in that same email link, it's got my first book as well, soft copies, which is still selling. It's funny, I sell them all the time. And in fact, I sold one the other day in New Zealand, and I said, how did you come? He said, oh, John Ross recommended you.
Oh, that's cool.
So he's obviously read it because he told someone else to read it. I always wonder where these people, I don't advertise my book anymore. I always wonder where people even find it. But pretty much every week another person orders one off my website. It's like, I don't even know where they come from.
That's pretty cool.
I'm on Audible and Amazon, and so I sell a lot of digital and audio books that just keep selling, and I don't have to do anything. I'll send you that link though, guys, to both of those.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually, I think I might have sent it at the beginning of this course.
You could have. I've literally got a file just with all your stuff.
Yeah, I think the first email I sent, I'll have a look. I'll send it again, but I'm pretty sure I sent it to you guys at the very beginning, and that one link has both books on it. And I've written another one, but that's just going to edit now. That'll come out next year.
Where do you find all the time, Bradley?
I don't sleep a lot.
Okay.
So, you know, when I'm in a writing mood, I'll probably write from 4 to 6 a.m. before I do other things, you know, write for a couple hours. And I just finished that other book a couple months ago. I wrote it during COVID. And again, mostly in the mornings before I get up before other people are up. And yeah, I just get inspired, and then I just write and write and write and write and write, and then all of a sudden, oh, I'm done, you know. And then it might be a while till I think of something else I really want to write about. I've written eight books, but only 3 for people. The rest are just for me and Sally.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Very cool.
And for someone who can't spell and has no grammar,
there's a thing called Grammarly. It's really good. Just download the app. Yeah.
All right, guys.
All right,
Nice
Brady.
chatting.
Take care.
Thanks, Bradley.
Cheers, Morgan.